Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me, James. If you don't know who James is, he is from the band Prozzak. He also played in Nelly Furtado, and he is from the Philosopher Kings. How's it going, James? Thank you for joining us.
It's going great. Yeah. Prozzak.
Beautiful. Um, what a crazy concept for the band. Um, I like how it was all like kind of a cartoon thing. I remember being in school. I spoke about this with Gerald from the Philosopher Kings, how much music really contributed a lot to Canadian artists at the time.
That
And
was such, yeah, it was like the perfect time for Prozzak to hit. Because,
absolutely.
yeah, everyone was watching Much Music. And so everyone saw the videos. And yeah, it was amazing.
And they actually played your video at my Much Music video dance.
Oh,
I,
cool.
I
Yeah.
remember that. Um, so for those of you who aren't from Canada, Much Music is a station. It's still around. It's called Much now, but they were really focused on Canadian music, and they had a countdown with other musicians from all over the world, and they mixed it up with Canadian music, help Canadian artists kind of get out there. And then they had these dances where they would go around to schools, high schools, elementary schools. I don't know about colleges, but they would have a video dance. So every song had a video, and they would bring the guys from Rick Campanelli and the
Yeah.
the VJs.
Yeah.
Um, it was a very cool experience for you guys being on the other side of the spectrum. You had two projects that were going, the Philosopher Kings and Prozzak, but more primarily, we're here to talk about your experience with the band Prozzak. Actually, I believe that the cartoon concept, all their videos and everything is kind of almost cartoony. It's all cartoons, right? Um,
It was. It was all cartoons. Yeah. This is my wall of inspiration here. So this is Prozzak. This is our first album. That's me, Milo. So it's Simon and Milo. Those are the characters that we created, and that was, as you can see, it did amazingly well at the time. So that kind of blew Philosopher Kings out of the water,
yeah,
as far as the fans that responded to it. So yeah, it kind of got everyone in the Philosopher Kings thinking about producing for other projects. That's what that did.
absolutely. And you guys predate the Gorillas with the
We
cartoon.
did. I know. I know. It's funny. We have to keep bringing that up because we were ahead of the Gorillas just by a pinch. But Damon Albarn was already pretty big with Blur, so they had a good head start on popularity. And I love the Gorillas too, man. They're cool.
Yeah,
But Simon and Milo were a true original, and I'm really thankful that we've got a lot of fans still. You know.
absolutely. And you guys came back for a bit a few years back.
So yeah, it's funny. Like we thought it was finished, and then we got a request to do this reunion show, and it was just such a bizarre request. It was at the Science Center for a cosplay rave. So it was like people dressing up as characters, and so me and Jay just looked at each other. Well, we call each other because he was in LA at the time, and we're like, okay, if we're gonna come back, this is the right show. And so we did it, not knowing if anyone would show up or be into it. And we had, not only was it packed beyond capacity and had to be shut down by the cops, but
Wow.
there was like multiple people dressed up like Simon and Milo. So it really hit home for us. So we're like, wow, those characters really touched a whole generation. And so that kind of just led to Jay and I getting inspired. We did a new album. We did a couple of big tours after, so it brought them back to life. It was cool.
And if you didn't get the experience Prozac while it was hot and ready, it sucks to be you. Really, it does. Um, no pun
I
intended, but
know.
that was a massive, massive hit. Um, but getting to that point through the Philosopher Kings and becoming Prozac, you guys had a physical altercation, and then it ended up being Prozac. Is that how it all went down?
Oh yeah, we got there's a whole legend behind it. Yeah, so Jay and I we were in the Philosopher Kings. He was the bass player. I'm one of the guitar players. Um, and we always we weren't the main songwriters from the beginning. His brother and the singer John and singer Gerald, or now called Jarvis Church, they were kind of writing most of the songs. And as Jay and I got more confidence as writers, wanted to write more. We were trying to squeeze it in, and it just wasn't fitting in the Philosopher Kings. So well, yeah, before we got, so anyway, we already like, we were polar opposite personalities, but we already knew we could kind of have some kind of connection musically. Then after a show in Montreal, we just like totally blew up about something I don't even remember now, but I think it was insulting my girlfriend at the time.
Oh,
Anyway, it was a reason enough, which I'm a peace loving guy, but I got outside and like, we got to fisticuffs. It was actually a one punch. I'm left-handed. It was a left hook, and that's what we named our production company afterwards. So basically, what we decided was, okay, the band had like dates. Philosopher Kings were in the middle of a tour. What can we do to kind of, make it happen and get together? And so we thought through the beauty of music, we could, come together. And actually, as cheesy as it sounds, that's what happened. And that's how Prozzak got started.
and what were the first songs you guys wrote?
First song was called Europa, and that one ended up on our first album, Hot Show. And we actually wrote it. So first of all, before we had really thought through the concept of the story and the characters, we wrote this song, and it was going to be a pitch to Ace of Base, who was like, if you remember, in the
Massive.
90s, they were a massive European electro pop band. So we wrote this very Euro kind of pop song, and Jay he pulled out one of the characters that he kind of used on the tour bus, like when he would just be joking around, and it was this British voice, and it was like this old kind of washed up musician that had been huge at one point, and whatever. So that's that's how Simon was born. He put that voice on the song, and we were recording it at Sony Records in Canada. At the time, it was a very cool building. They had a recording studio where Philosopher King's first album, both Prozzak albums were recorded. They had a writer's room. Anyway, so we were just writing, and the A&R guy opened the door, popped his head in, and he's like, what is that, man? I love it. And so we said, yeah, it's a new thing we're doing. He's like, can you do the whole album? And we just looked at each other and said, oh yeah, sure. And then he left, and we were like, okay, so how can we do this?
And it was fun. It's fun to make that kind of music too, right?
You said it. You nailed it. Because honestly, whenever Jay and I like I say, when we weren't making music, we were always at each other's throats. As soon as we were writing a song, we were laughing constantly, having the best time ever. And I think that kind of comes across in the songs. So Prozzak to me was pure magic, and the fact that it's had on fans and still has is pretty awesome.
It's incredible because I always believed that the Philosopher Kings is one of the most talented bands in the history of Canada,
Thank you.
musically. Because if you look at the nucleus of the band, the members, and what other projects they've gone on to do and produce, and you guys have been featured in a couple movies as well with the one with Lindsay Lohan. What's it called? It's not
Perfect
ringing my
score.
mind. Yeah,
Perfect score. Yeah.
yeah. Lots of success with Prozzak. How did you come up with the concept about doing it all animation when it comes to the videos and presenting yourselves?
Well, the first reason we thought of it was when Jay was doing the character, he realized, you know what, there's no way I can perform that live, because it just felt like it was too much of a joke. Like it wasn't real enough. Secondly, Jay hates performing. Honestly, he's scared. He gets really insecure when it comes to singing.
Yeah.
So we started thinking of, well, how else could we do it? And then we just thought it would be so cool if we had these two characters, and if we came up with buddy situation, Simon and Milo. Simon looking for true love, Milo's his buddy to help him out, who seems to kind of have it together. And the only accent I could do is kind of a fake Arnold Schwarzenegger-ish Eastern European accent. So that ended up being Milo.
Wow. And how long did it take for you guys to conceptualize those two characters?
Not long. Like we came up with who they were and kind of what the overall story was, and that made it really easy to write too, because you kind of just knew, okay, he's on a search for love, and we're going to different countries, different girls, different scenarios. That's how the first album the shape of it. But we worked with an illustrator who was super talented and who unfortunately passed away really young, like he was 29. His name was Scott Harder, and he was the one that actually drew the characters. Well, that's the first. So we worked with him to kind of design what they would look like, and but anyway, so he actually passed away right before the album came out, so he didn't really get to see how it connected with people, which is a real shame. But hopefully, hopefully he's has
He is
watched
proud.
and appreciates it, in
He is
spirit.
proud, and being an illustrator and getting it all done and stuff, it's pretty costly to do.
Well,
Right
that
now,
was the other cool thing at the time. Like Sony Music had a lot of money at that moment because Celine Dion was their biggest artist, was just huge globally. So they had this extra money and they invested it in other Canadian acts, which was hadn't happened before then. Like, so it was just kind of a new thing in Canada. So we were really just lucky that we were a part of that at the right time. So they spent crazy money on those Prozzak videos. We had a team. Actually, Anne Murray, the singer, had an animation company based out of Toronto. We started working with the team there, the directors. Then it's also had an office in LA. Went there, and then the actual hand-drawn illustration or animation happened in Korea. So it was like a global enterprise. We worked, like Jay and I wrote the concepts for every video, and we actually worked with the head of the video department at Sony at the time, who's a young guy who was like 23 at the time, named Mark Lestracco, who happened to be super talented. Like Sony was, again, they just hired some great people, and all the stars aligned. So Mark and Jay and I would like work the concept up, get the storyboards, and then we send it to the animation company. So it was pretty awesome.
and you guys were rocking at Canada's Wonderland at one point as well. There's
Yeah.
there's a
Oh, never
theme
mind
park.
our first gig. Yeah, we were opening for Destiny's Child. So we got to meet. Jay and I went. We said hi to Beyonce before she was Beyonce, and
Wow,
and then we actually were in the audience for that show where it was just the characters on the screen, and that was such a cool experience where we were just there, totally anonymous, and we just looked around to see if people would get into it. Within a minute, they were like in it. They were dancing to the music, so it was awesome. And then after a while, I think we both kind of got a little jealous of the characters. We were like, well, it would be fun to play on stage after it kept getting bigger and bigger. So
incredible. And you guys also performed at the Junos at one point too, right?
absolutely, yeah, it was 2000. Yeah, I remember we were performing, like we had pyro, we had these two massive heads of the characters built that we stood on. That literally cost like 50 grand each. They had like an artist. I don't know. Well, that's not how much maybe it cost to make them, but that's how much he charged somebody to. And anyway, they were super heavy, made of fiberglass. And I remember Alanis Morissette was like in the front row, and she was just like looked really confused. I couldn't tell if she liked it, hated it, what. Anyway, it was awesome.
For the Junos back then, you'd have like even American groups come there too, right?
Yeah, yeah, just like now, exactly. Yeah,
Just be like ripping it up on stage, and you'd have like the Backstreet Boys in the front row.
right. They were there actually that year. You're right. Yeah,
And going back to Canada's Wonderland, there's been a few cool things that I've seen there. I've seen the Rosie O'Donnell show there, and I've
really.
seen Bret the Hitman Hart there, and like just crazy interviews, Entertainment Tonight as well. So,
Can I
um,
tell you? I just have to just go back for a second, talk about how crazy music is and how Prozzak is, how it's all connected. My first summer gig when I was 18, like when I was just going to University of Toronto, where I met the guys in the Philosopher Kings, I worked at Canada's Wonderland in the band. They had these cover bands that would play like 8 hours a day playing covers of old pop tunes. And we dressed in like they had us dressed like in white pants, floral
wow.
shirts. So I did that all summer at Canada's Wonderland. And then to go back a couple of years later and be at, have a show and have fans, that was pretty awesome. And then to go to Backstreet Boys, they're huge. When we played the Junos, everyone was like, they were the biggest thing. I would not know that I would actually end up, the Backstreet Boys would cut two of my songs in 2013 from when my friend, I was living in London at the time. They came to London to work with my friend Martin Treffy to produce a very acoustic sounding album, which was different for them. And they needed songs. And so I was like, oh, I got some great ones for you. So anyway, I'm connected to everybody.
Which songs are those?
It's called, there's a great song called Try and another one called Trust Me. But the first, yeah, Try. So those are both on In a World Like This. Came out in 2012, 2013.
Cool.
Anyway, Max Martin was on it. It was just like one of those bizarre things. Just like you never know where the music will lead you.
Well, I guess Sony's probably licking their chops getting the royalties back from the Prozzak spend, and hey, that's a
Exactly.
massive
Yeah,
bill.
that one worked out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just how things used to be, uh, eh, compared to now. I mean, despite what's going on in the world, but the music industry in Canada, like, is it still bumping, or like I don't understand like how it's all changed. Because as I remember, growing up, it was the big thing. Much Music would be a cool place to go play. You see all the up and coming bands on there. There be people playing at different venues around Toronto, London, the Hammer, little
Yeah.
towns like Woodstock and whatever. But now it's, you know, I don't know if people go to shows anymore. I mean, do they?
I guess you don't.
I've,
there
I've
are,
been a
you know
few,
what?
but
Some people still do, but it is very different, right? With we got the metaverse now. We got like which works out fine for Simon and Milo. But yeah, things have changed a lot. On the plus side though, when I started, it was like it was like an issue being from Canada and trying to break out into the world because you didn't get noticed by the States, you didn't get noticed internationally. Um, and so even if we're signed to Sony Canada, that only really had influence in Canada, right? Sony US was a whole thing, a different thing. But so now we got the biggest acts in the world are Canadian. We got Drake, we got The Weeknd, Bieber, we got everything. Shawn Mendes. I mean, it's crazy that Canada is like undeniably the center of the music world
yeah.
in many ways, right?
Well, I mean, if you look at it the way that I do, is like, are they signed to American music deals or are they signed to Canadian music deals? That
That's
makes
a
a difference.
very good point. Yeah, and most of the time they're still signed to the states first in that sense. But what's changed now is that we've got everyone looking at Canada now, and so you don't have to go to New York. You don't have to go to Nashville or London or LA to get noticed. So people are looking, seeing what's coming out of Toronto. There's so many cool things coming out of Canada, right? Or not just Toronto, but Canada. So that is a real, that's inspiring actually. So it's encouraging.
Absolutely. It's something that we need. We have some regulations here on the radio. 35 to 40% Canadian content needs to be played each hour on our radio stations, but still, that does not help enough. We have fundings like factor, like little areas that you can apply to, like maybe like a grant from the government or
Grants.
something like that. Um,
Yeah, I mean, there's things that are great about being in Canada and making music here, but it's just a very small population in a massive country. So there are logistical challenges to that, right? So touring is always like if you can tour Canada, you can tour anywhere. And so I have to go back to the Philosopher Kings. Like we fought hard for every fan that we got, and we put on a killer show. I have to say, like we were a very good live band. That's probably I'd say the best thing about the band. And so anyone that went to our show, I think we had a great time, and won't forget it. But man, I've been like across the country so many times in a van, sleeping on gear, and then gradually graduating to the tour bus and then flights sometimes. So anyway, it's a tough country to tour in. So for a new artist today, they don't have the same kind of experience. Like you don't have a record label putting thousands of dollars behind you to tour to get started. So it's really up to the artist now to like build an online presence, get enough followers, and then kind of to have the other people pay attention.
And there's no like artist development really anymore with record labels. They're not really investing the money
So
into it.
much.
They want you to be developed. They want you to have great songs, and they want you to have a following on social media.
Yeah.
Um, I guess that's how you can kind of gauge things, right? Now it's all visible, it's all transparent, whether you bought your followers or not. And also, if people come to your shows, like, I mean, The Weekend was playing in Guelph before things blew up for him. He was packing venues like to the windows, right? So, um,
Nice. Did you see him in Guelph?
I've seen him in Guelph. It was cool.
How was the show?
It was fantastic. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Cool.
I didn't even know he was gonna be that big, right? And my friend just kinda dragged me to it, and I was like, "Hey, whatever, like, let's do it." I'm more of a rock guy. I like rock and roll, and,
Yeah.
um, I've got a lot of, like, that's my roots, a lot of knowledge in rock and roll and stuff like that, but it was very different, right? It was very different. It was very cool.
There's a
Um,
lot of really good rock bands too. I mean, at the time, like '90s. I mean, one of my good friends was in Moist. That was another
yeah,
big band in Canada. Like there was a whole moment where there was a lot happening with bands and stuff like that.
yeah,
So
I, Mother Earth, you
I'm
got
Mother Earth. Yeah, yeah, Edwin and the gang. Yeah, man.
I can keep on going, Our Lady Peace, they're still around.
Yeah,
Um, Moist just released a brand new record. Um,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So they're coming back.
yeah, when you come back, when you come back, is it hard to come back and, like, see, are people waiting for you when you come back? Like, are you
Well, you never know. That's the scary thing about no matter how big you are or were. When it's an hour before the show, I'm still like nervous that no one's going to be there except maybe my mom and
that's
dad.
okay.
So you never know. But I have to say, when both Philosopher Kings and Prozzak have kind of come back and had a reunion and new music, it is awesome that we have been embraced. There are fans that still remember us, and yeah, and as you get older, you kind of appreciate it more. Like when Prozzak was happening the first time around, it was just such a whirlwind, and it was so bizarre, and it was mostly driven by the characters. It felt totally surreal. So I didn't even get it, like the impact so much until years later when you're running into fans or fans are posting online about, you know, how they came out, were afraid to come out until they heard the song Biaz, and that kind of inspired them, or people, there was major life events for a lot of people around, their favorite bands. So
I think if that project came back, it would definitely fly again. It's the songs are not dated at all, and, it's fantastic. They're fun to listen to. And, I wanna ask you, what are you up to now? Like, what's kinda music stuff you up to now? Any recent projects?
yeah, so I mean, after just like that was, the 20 years in between, it's like basically I ended up writing and producing for a lot of other artists, and that became like my biggest passion, right? I love collaborating with artists and kind of helping them lift, their vision or kind of get them to another level. So that's what I've been inspired to do, and that's what has kept me going. Um, as well, so I mean, Nelly Furtado was one that not only so lot of the Philosopher Kings had success with Nelly because their first album, um, Bryan and Gerald from the band produced her first two albums. I played guitar on both albums, and but that was my role there. And then her third album she did with Timbaland, and basically right at the beginning, Nelly, like, she said, James, you got to come on the road with me. You got to tour in my band. And I was like, Nelly, when you're playing Wembley, give me a call. Like I said, maybe I didn't say it quite that bluntly, but that was the point. Like,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. When you get to a certain point. So 2008, I got a call. They're like, dude, do you wanna tour? We're playing like Wembley for this Princess Diana, tribute concert with Elton John and Kanye and all these people. And I'm like, hell yeah! So that was the right time. So I was able to kind of tour the world with her and do these, amazing venues that I always dreamed about playing. That even with the bands I was in, Foster Kings, Prozzak, we hadn't gotten to that level internationally. So that was like a dream come true to play, tour the world with her. And then after that, the natural progression was for us to write and me to produce something else for her. And she wanted so her next album was going to be a Latin album, something in Spanish.
Awesome.
Um, and I listened to like a ton of music from all over the place, but always have loved flamenco music, Brazilian music, all kinds of Latin music. So I invited her to the studio one day. I was like, "Oh, I want to do a solo guitar record, and wanted to know if you want to do a duet. You want to come try to write something?" So she said, "Yeah, okay, sure." So she came, and then at the end of the session, she's like, "Would you mind if I put this out?" And so, which is of course, this is my, if it came out on my album, it's like, oh, that's okay.
Yeah. Who is
Yeah,
that?
you put it out on your album, yeah, definitely. So that became the song "Me Plan," which was the title track, and me and Nelly and a good friend of ours, Alex Cuba, who's an awesome singer-songwriter in his own right. The three of us were a good team, so we wrote like half of the album, and we had a song, a #1 song all over the world with Manos Al Aire. So anyway, that was just like the whole journey has been kind of one step at a time. I don't always know what's next, but it's always led to something really cool. And it's about the relationships you make go along the way. So
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for joining us today. It's called Meet Me for
thanks, man.
Coffee. I really appreciate this. How do you take your coffee? You got my coffee here. How do
You
you
know
take your
what? I'm more of a mocha guy. Definitely like
Oh,
froth the milk up, put some good chocolate in there.
yeah. You spent some time making that
Yeah,
drink, eh?
it's true. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
awesome. Well, I've been on the chase for a while to find someone from Prozzak to bring on the show, and
Awesome.
it all worked out.
Hopefully it was worth the wait, man. I really appreciate you reaching out,
It
George,
was
and it was
so
awesome.
cool, man. Honestly, like, you have, there's artists and then there's actors that you go after because you think people are gonna wanna hear them, but you find artists that you want to talk to, right?
Awesome.
And this has been really cool, and I feel that this won't be the last time you'll come on the show. With your next project, you will come
I
back, and
appreciate that. Absolutely, man. I will say this though. I'll give you a little surprise information. So Prozac, yes, we had put Prozac to bed again before the pandemic, but we have been inspired during the pandemic to maybe consider doing something again. And we're actually working on an NFT collection right now of new little videos and artwork of the band and some new acoustic versions of the old songs. So
cool,
I was just recording that actually 2 days ago. So we'll
interesting.
see
So
where that will lead. It might have some shows this summer. Fingers crossed. So keep an eye out. Maybe we'll talk again about that.
amazing, yeah. And if you don't know what NFTs are, get on it.
Oh,
Figure out how to buy them.
yeah.
Figure out how to mint them. And
Exactly.
get on that when that announcement comes out. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Okay, see you, man.